You're listening to an episode of the Churchill Storywork Project about Indigenous knowledge of human polar bear coexistence. This is a storywork research project where we explore Indigenous knowledge through storytelling with Inuit, Métis, Hudson Dene, and Swampy Cree knowledge holders in Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. In addition to producing academic research about Indigenous community members' knowledge of coexistence, we also created podcasts in the voices of the knowledge holders themselves. We primarily created the podcast by and for the community. However, we hope others learn from and enjoy them as well. My name is KT Miller, and this work was part of my Master's in Interdisciplinary Studies at Royal Roads University. I had the great honor of working with Cree elder Georgina Berg as a co-researcher on this project. We met over a cup of tea, and as they say, the rest is history. The Indigenous Knowledge Keepers of Churchill provided guidance and advice throughout all phases of this research, beginning with research design all the way through the dissemination of results. Knowledge holder and graphic designer Nikia McIver made significant intellectual and graphic contributions to this work, and if you haven't checked out the timeline on our website or in our supplementary material, it is Nikia's artistic and intellectual creation, and it is amazing. I also want to acknowledge and thank my supervisors, Dr. Michael Lickers, who is an Indigenous scholar in residence at Royal Roads University, and importantly suggested I use the Indigenous method of storytelling in this work. And Dr. Dominique Henry, a research scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, who provided support and guidance through the technical and emotional journey of this project. We are also very grateful to Polar Bears International and Environment and Climate Change Canada who funded this research. More information about this research can be found at churchillpolarbearcoexistence.com. This series includes 4 podcast episodes that explore 4 different time periods: the distant past, prior to the relocation of Indigenous people to present-day Churchill; the past, which was sort of the transition from more of a traditional lifestyle to a wage economy; the present, which is defined in our research as the tourism era; and the future. In episode 1, we explore the distant past, which we define as intergenerational knowledge prior to 1957, when the Cree and Dene were relocated to present-day Churchill. At this time, the fur trade was the primary economy on the shores of Hudson Bay. Polar bears were not often seen, and when spotted, they were usually killed. The meat was used for dog food, and the hide was sold to a Hudson Bay Company trading post. Through our research, we found that significant intergenerational knowledge was lost when people were relocated to Churchill, where, to quote a Cree knowledge holder, it was all about a new life. We hope you learn from and enjoy episode 1 of our podcast series.
Maybe I could start. Our dad used to talk about his experiences trapping. And he would always talk about the time that he was checking his traps. This was in April, I think. It was early April, I think.
It must have been probably March, maybe, eh?
In March, early
You talking
April.
about that there?
Yeah, he came across a mother and 2 cubs. He was checking his traps, and as a hunter, as a trapper, he shot the mother and took the hide and the 2 cubs to the depot in New York factory. He was talking about his experiences trapping, and that's what they did.
When he shot polar bear, it wasn't intended to eat it or anything. It was just for the fur.
I think it was a combination of both.
Okay.
Dog food and
Dog food. Okay.
then providing for his family, eh?
There were some in your factory they used to kill them. Yeah. They used to kill them for the dogs and that was it.
Yeah.
I guess you could poison wolves back then, eh?
Yeah.
You had Clone Lake, that's not
Okay,
that far
yeah.
from that way. They're out there, so Simeon put poison on that caribou. And he got some wolves, but he also got one bear that time. So
Like
imagine
sheep, yeah.
with that poison going on, probably a few bears died.
Well, see, that animal died of poison, another animal would eat it, he'd get it, and whatever, stuff like that.
You could see where they put a gun there and
Yeah.
they bait the bear and the gun
Mhm.
goes off by itself.
Yeah.
Probably nobody knew about it, just because they had dogs and safety, I guess. I don't know.
So your question was about bears back then.
Yes,
So they would have shot a bear, right? That was common.
Yes, yeah. Well, in those days, Dad, you see, or your dad himself, you'd be traveling like that, a bear come across close to your track, you're gone.
Yeah.
Now they come to you. Oh, you don't walk around out there without a rifle or something. You never know where they are. You can see them in the grass. Some places tall grass.
Yeah.
We know for a fact because we have archaeologists who've come for many years now doing various digs, and they found a lot of these pre-contact tools and rocks with unique markings in them. And with these findings, they are able to send them out for further testing. And on some of the rocks that they actually cooked with, so they did heat that meat, and they found bear fat. So we know that the pre-Dorset Tool people were hunting and harvesting polar bears. It would have been in the early 1600s, so around 1620, I believe it was. The indigenous doing their hunting and harvesting from, spring to that early winter. By then they would have been in the tree line at that time. And there wasn't contact with the indigenous and the Jens Monk crew. So Jens Monk sailed into the Churchill River exploring, right? And not knowing the environment and where they were, the climate, they actually got iced in. So they were iced in across on the west side of the river, and they had to find a way to survive. So with that being said, there was a party of 60, I believe. And they sent their men out to find food, and this is when they actually harvested a polar bear. They killed a polar bear. And I guess not knowing how to properly prepare the polar bear meat, as everyone knows in this day and age, that it needs to be prepared a certain way because there's risks consuming different parts of the polar bear. And the Inuit have that knowledge. So with that being said, polar bear was hunted and harvested and not prepared properly. And the young monk men consumed it, and many ended up dying from what they believe was trichinosis. And so, yeah, that was all due to ill-prepared meat and the hunting of the polar bear by non-indigenous up in this area. And those who did not die from the consumption of that ill-prepared meat, they actually died from scurvy or malnourishment and obviously exposure due to the very cold winters we have here. So out of 60 men, 3 left and were able to return back to their area of Denmark. And those who did not didn't get a proper burial because they couldn't be buried into the frozen ground. And so when the indigenous came out of the tree lines to start their spring harvest, they stumbled upon these men with strange clothing and strange colored skin. And that's where Churchill River gets its nickname, River of Strangers, because of Jens Monk's dead men. And that's the story. And that's such an important story of polar bears, right?
See, part of this is that the relocation, like closing the depot in '57. I think we were part of the last families leaving, Georgina's family and our family. So that was pretty much the loss of the culture then, when you think about it, because you were relocated here. And then so now it's different, eh? Instead of trapping for a living, you're employed now. And then so you lose some of that. And then like Morris was saying, after he was 65, then it was time to go, and his interest was trapping again to show his boys how to trap. And, yeah.
I come from a generation where my mom, my granny, they experienced the traumas of forced relocation off York Factory, so I lost out on a lot of traditional knowledge, but so did they. So right now I'm just like reclaiming that, researching that, and grasping at anything I can.
We lost all of that when we came here.
Yeah.
It's all about, all about a new life.
On Saturday, it said you were born down the flats.
Yeah.
Is that right? Eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mom couldn't make it to the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my uncles, the ones that was driving the dog team, well, I guess he brought her across, but he couldn't make it. Well, he had Fort Churchill was still quite a ways for her to go, eh?
Yeah.
But I was born premature. I'm lucky to be alive. I was only like 4 pounds, I think, 3.5 pounds.
Wow.
I was in an incubator for about 4 or 5 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Oh, there used to be 9 of us. Now there's only 3.
Did you all grow up in the same little cabin on the flats?
No, we're all separated.
Okay.
Residential school, which I hate.
Yeah.
Foster homes, adoption. Yeah. Never, hardly ever thought about polar bear. And then growing up, the elders used to tell us, you can't talk about, like, don't talk about eagles, don't talk about, like, they didn't like people talking like about animals or being mean to them and stuff like that. Because they're spirits, like that. Native people used to be able to turn themselves into almost any animal they wanted to, back in the day. I'm not saying it's not like that now, but it is, but it was more powerful, like it was more, I guess, and they more dependent on the medicine person, than they do nowadays.
When they were able to practice their
Freely.
spiritual practices more freely.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to episode 1 of the Churchill Storywork Project about Indigenous knowledge of human polar bear coexistence. In episode 2, we will hear stories from the past. Our thanks to the Indigenous knowledge keepers of Churchill who co-created, provided guidance, and contributed throughout this research. Florence Hamilton, Patricia Kandrian, Catherine DeMules, and Georgina Oman. This work would not have been possible without the blessing and contributions of additional knowledge holders and elders in the community. Nikki Clace, Dave Daly, Wyatt Daly, Brian Gulick, Jill Larkin, Antonina Kandrian, Heather Spence-Patello, Michael Spence, Morris Spence, Solly Norman Spence, Leroy Whitmore, and Eva Yassi. Our thanks to the entire community of Churchill for the support of and engagement with this project. Fundamental direction during the initiation of this research was provided by Jeff York, Evan Richardson, and Helen McEwen. Our gratitude to the Polar Bears International team for providing significant logistical and technical support. Once again, my name is KT Miller, and this research was part of my Master's in Interdisciplinary Studies at Royal Roads University. I am so deeply grateful to the many people that made this project possible. Our co-authors on this project include Georgina Berg, the Indigenous Knowledge Keepers of Churchill, Nikia McIver, Dr. Michael Lickers, an Indigenous scholar in residence at Royal Roads University, and Dr. Dominique Henry, a research scientist at Environment and Climate Change Canada. A big thank you to Polar Bears International and Environment and Climate Change Canada for funding this work. More information about this research can be found at churchillpolarbearcoexistence.com.